Well, about a month ago, I was at the seminary Regina Apostolorum, about 5 miles west of St. Peter, so on the edge of Rome. I was there for what they call Baby Bishop School. It's a formal school for all those who were named bishop in the previous year. It's kind of a training camp for us. And it was fairly Spartan accommodations. It reminded me of my college seminary room. It was a small room, unair conditioned. The bed was, I don't know, like maybe 2.5 feet wide. A lot of us said that we were worried about rolling out of bed the first couple nights. Food is pretty good in the Italian style. But I'll tell you the best thing about Baby Bishop School was the opportunity to be with, in my case, 156 other bishops from around the world. In fact, it was the biggest class of new bishops since they started the school many years ago. But you'd meet people at lunch and dinner and breakfast from Ghana, from the Philippines, from Canada, from Scotland, all over the world. So it was a wonderful chance to get a sense of the universality of the church. I'll tell you a typical day at New Bishop School. 7:30 we gather in a very nice chapel for morning prayer sung, which was then integrated into Mass. And the Mass was celebrated typically by one of the curial cardinals or archbishops, so the people in charge of these congregations and dicasteries in the Vatican. And the idea was to introduce the bishops from around the world to these figures in Rome. Mass is followed by the breakfast, which usually involved conversing in a variety of languages. I was kind of stressed to the limit. My French is pretty good from my years in Paris. I spoke French to the Canadians and to the French and some of the Africans. My Spanish is like okay, and so I try Spanish out once in a while. My Italian is a little bit beyond like restaurant Italian, so I didn't get too far with that. But you were kind of stressed to the limits at the meals. Breakfast was followed by a formal talk. So we go to an auditorium, and they had simultaneous translation. So we all had the headsets. But the talks were given in a variety of languages, whatever the nationality of the speaker was. So they'd be in French and Spanish, Italian, various things. Never in English, by the way. And I would usually try my best to follow it, for at least several minutes. I often would get tired out and I'd listen to the English translation. Talks are followed by pretty lively Q&A sessions with the bishops. The afternoon, we'd have another major, formal presentation. They'd be followed by what the Italians call circoli minori, which means little circles. It means the small groups. And they were determined by language. So the English speakers would all go off. I think there were about 37 or 8 English speakers. So we were a big contingent. And there we would talk about the presentations. And we kind of horse around a little bit too and just have fun and relax. I remember one night, and these sessions, mind you, would resume in the evening after dinner. So they'd go until, 10:30 at night. But one of the days they announced that they were going to ask 8 bishops from around the world to speak on their country and what are the challenges facing the church, etc. I remember distinctly thinking, oh gosh, those poor guys, that will be asked, and maybe I'll find a way of skipping that session. Well, proving that God has a sense of humor, Cardinal Ouellet, who's the head of the bishop's congregation, and he's the guy running the whole operation. He approached me at one of the little breaks, and he said, "Would you be willing to give a talk on America?" So I had to go. Well, it turned out really, I thought that was one of the better sessions. The 8 people that presented, and I talked a little bit about the challenge of secularism, about the threats to religious liberty, the loss of young people in the church, etc., and then a lot of other positive things too. But boy, you get a sense of perspective because the bishop from Aleppo spoke, from Syria, who's in the middle of this horrific civil war. So what it's like to be a leader of that church. A bishop spoke from Sydney, Australia. We had a bishop from Reykjavik in Iceland. And so you really get a sense of the universality of the church. And it puts your own challenges and struggles sort of in perspective, I think for all of us, the highlight of Baby Bishop School was Friday, so the end of the week. We all had an audience with Pope Francis. So we went to the Sala Clementina, which is this extraordinary room in the Vatican Palace, and we waited for a while, and then in came the Pope. And he spoke for about 30 minutes. He gave us a long discourse. Now, it was in Italian, and the room was kind of echoey, And my Italian's not that great, so I was only able to get bits of it. But I later read it in English, and his great motif was, "You were all chosen during the year of mercy." And so keep that in mind. May it be the leitmotif of your time as bishop. And he said, I forget the Italian word exactly, but he said, "You were all fished out by the divine mercy." Like we're fished out of the sea of sin and so on. And now your job is to fish other people out with the same divine mercy. So I remember that. But then the Pope stayed and spent time with every single bishop, which is pretty impressive for an 80-year-old man to meet 157 bishops one by one. The three of us from Los Angeles who were made bishops together a year ago stood in line together. And in the past, he's referred to the three of us, to Archbishop Gomez, as your triplets. He'd say, "How are your triplets doing?" So when the first of us, Bishop Joe Brennan, came up, he saw the Pope and said, "I'm one of the triplets of Arzobispo Gomez." And I saw the Pope's face just lit up, and he said, "¿Dónde están los otros?" Like, where are the others? And so we came forward, and the Pope very warmly greeted us. And I must say, to my great surprise, he knew the work of Word on Fire. He knew the work that our whole team has been doing over the past many years. So I was very, touched by that and very lifted up by it. I'll tell you one more little story about that week. I think it was Thursday of that week at the Mass in the morning. They would sing songs from all over the world, in all the different languages. There's songs in Spanish, Italian, German, French, all over. Well, on Thursday, they sang in English, "Here I Am, Lord," for the communion meditation. Well, I've heard "Here I Am, Lord" about 10,000 times in my life. And when I was coming of age, we sang that song all the time. If I were planning a liturgy today, I would probably not choose "Here I Am, Lord." Just it's been so overdone. But I must say, as I sat there with these bishops from all over the world and the choir, and people really knew that song and they were taking up, the words, that I found it very moving because I thought, well, it's true. At a certain point in my life, I did hear the Lord calling, and so did everybody else in that room. And all of us, in our different ways and different backgrounds, and all that, all of us did say some version of, "Here I am, Lord, send me." And it led us to that room in Rome as bishops of the church. And so it was kind of, to me, a fitting summation of that whole week's experience. In God's mysterious providence, I've been called into this new role, and to be, in the presence of the successor of Peter, who has called us into this task, I just found that, very moving. And I found the whole week, even though it had its rigors, as a wonderful, really uplifting experience.
Welcome back to the Word on Fire show. I'm Brandon Vaught, the host and the content director here at Word on Fire. Joining us back in Santa Barbara is the great Bishop Robert Barron. Bishop Barron, good to talk with you.
Hey, Brandon. Always good to be with you.
Now, I want to catch everyone up on a couple of exciting events here that we just had. One of them I got to join you for was a visit to Seattle, Washington, where we stopped by the headquarters of Amazon. Tell us what you were doing there and how it went.
I was there for a fishbowl, which is a interview about a book, and you're on stage at the Amazon headquarters with an interviewer, and about, maybe 200 people in the room, and then it's broadcast around the Amazon world, and we have, I think, a video of it up now on YouTube, right? Anyway, it was a chance to talk about my book, Arguing Religion, and to be at one of the real centers of American culture right now at Amazon, I thought was interesting. And Seattle is a cool city. I've been there many, many times. I like it a lot. So I just enjoyed that whole experience.
Yeah, we'll be talking more about that event moving forward. And I think we're going to take the audio of that Q&A fishbowl conversation and we'll use it as a future episode here on the show. So,
yeah, good.
If you haven't seen the YouTube video, it'll come to the podcast here pretty soon. Listen, second thing I want to ask you about, was something you just returned from a few minutes ago.
Oh, yeah.
You were at the Poor Clares convent there in California. Tell us why you were there and what you did.
There's a wonderful community of Poor Clares, just about 5-minute drive from my house here over near the mission. And I say Mass there once a month for the community, so I've come to know them pretty well. And one of the young sisters did her first profession today, and I had the privilege of presiding at that. I'd never done that before. So it was a good turnout. A lot of her family members were there. And the Poor Clares, as you know, are a pretty intense community. They're largely contemplatives, and they're cloistered there. To me, the most moving moment after she received her veil and the cord, and we, she was formally professed, her family came up, and kind of one by one from the chapel, and they embraced her, And one of the sisters said to me, it's very interesting. She said, "That's the last time they'll ever embrace her, because once you're Poor Clare, you're cloistered and you're behind the grill, and even family wouldn't have that kind of physical contact with you." So it was very moving because it was both congratulation and a kind of farewell, a kind of, now we let go of you as you do your work for the church as a bride of Christ. So it's a very powerful ceremony to me, very emotionally moving.
I know we use that language of like becoming a bride of Christ. Does the first profession ceremony have overtones of like a wedding? And are you playing the role of Christ the bridegroom in a sense?
Not quite. The promise is made formally to the abbess. So I'm there presiding at it, and but the language of the liturgy and the ceremony, it's all the language of marriage and bridegroom, and the Song of Songs is featured very prominently. So it's very powerful, moving, especially, yesterday, as I record these words, we had the gospel reading of the wedding feast at Cana, and the idea of Christ the bridegroom and the church the bride, and that runs right through the Bible. Your builder wants to marry you, Isaiah says, so God, the builder of the whole universe, wants to marry us. He wants to share his life intimately with us. So this young sister today was giving very, very vivid personal expression to that.
Well, today's topic is scapegoating on social media, on the internet, and it was sort of provoked in your mind by a recent incident where a group of young high school kids encountered a Native American elder who was chanting and beating a drum. This all happened in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The encounter was captured on video, and almost immediately the video went viral. We're talking millions of views within just a few hours. And I think the initial impression was that here's yet another example of cultural insensitivity. These young guys are sort of mocking this Native American elder. The story has kind of shifted at the time we're recording this. Details are still coming out. It's not entirely clear what happened. And that's not really the point of this whole episode. We don't want to adjudicate the facts of that encounter. But what you observed was the reaction, especially in social media, to this incident. So I guess, first of all, tell us like what you were seeing and hearing in the wake of this.
Yeah, I came across this video. I think I was on my Facebook feed, and I was looking, and suddenly there it was, this video of a kid. And it was confusing, I must say. It still is a bit. This kid looking a bit awkward, grinning at this man who was very close to him, kind of almost face to face, and he was beating a drum and chanting like a Native American chant. And then people were around, they were making noise and so on. The kid didn't really say anything or make any sort of gesture. He just stood and smiled. Now, as you say, most people took that as some kind of condescending or patronizing look, that he was mocking the elder. And so as I scrolled through trying to figure out what was going on, I think there were at that time about 50,000 comments on Facebook, millions of views. I thought, my goodness, what is this? And of course, they were almost 100% at that point against the kid. And they were, as is typical, sadly typical on the social media, marked by a remarkable, cruelty. But here's what really got me, Brandon. And again, leaving aside the details of what was going on, I don't really know. It's still kind of ambiguous what was happening there. And I'm not here to adjudicate that. I don't know what's on the ground. But gosh, the reaction, the cruelty, but then people who were calling actively for this kid to be destroyed. And then people who had done some work and they found his address, his parents, address, school, emails for various people. And get him and send things in. I remember thinking, my goodness, let's just say for sake of argument, that he's guilty of being a racist jerk, and that he was acting like an idiot the way a lot of high school kids act. Okay, let's say for sake of argument that's true. But the reaction of like tens of thousands of people who were, as I thought to myself, they're effectively destroying this kid's life, even threatening his life. You know how crazy people are. And now you're handing out, here's his address and here's where he lives, and now email his parents and his principal. And I thought, oh my goodness, I mean, what is happening here to us as a culture when that's the reaction to this at best ambiguous event? But how the internet is such a breeding ground for this kind of nastiness and violence. And then it led me to Rene Girard, who is never really too far from my mind, especially in our culture today.
I want to talk about Rene Girard and spend most of the rest of the episode on his theory of scapegoating and how it applies online. But first, let's stick with that big rage-inducing reaction in social media, because what struck me was this wasn't an aberration. It seems the continuation of a pattern we've seen over the last several months, specifically on social media, on the political left, on the political right, inside the church, outside the church. Whenever you find something disagreeable, it seems like the first reaction is to jump online, to signal my distaste with this, and to generate rage, to build a mob around this, and then to come after that person. Has that been your experience too, what you've seen?
Yeah, and I've used the internet. I mean, you and I know that, and we've used it, I think, very well for evangelical purposes. It's a good thing. I don't engage in sort of unnuanced bad mouthing of the internet or social media, but there is something that is fever swamp like about these comm boxes, about the internet. They tend to breed very bad things in us. And I don't know, maybe it's the anonymity of it, that you can just get on there and say whatever you want. It's the ease of commentary. So years gone by, you want to complain about something, you had to write a letter and you had to put it in an envelope, and then some editor probably had to read it and approve it. It was screened. Now, I mean, unscreened views can just tumble out of your mouth. Is the fact that you feel, oh gosh, I can reach this giant audience right away, but it gives rise to this violence. It brings out the very worst in us. And man, in a frankly violent way. I think, look, say what you want about this kid. Again, for sake of argument, let's say he's a racist jerk. I don't know that, but let's say for sake of argument, he's 17. He's a 17-year-old kid. That's the right reaction. How about ground him for a month? How about, tell his parents to discipline him? How about the school could do, but hand out his address so that people can attack him personally? I mean, he's a kid. But what is it about the internet that allows us to, some people have made this comparison, Brandon, I think is interesting, because I mean, we all sense it. If you're passing someone in a hallway, so person to person, and that guy kind of steps in front of you, I mean, you probably, excuse me, or, shouldn't have done that. But now do it in a car, right? You're in a car and someone cuts you off. Man, we can be just immediately violent and hateful in our speech. There's something about that anonymity or the hiddenness of it, or I can do it with impunity. I know that they're not going to get back at me. Whatever it is, it's making the internet to some degree, and again, I say to some degree, I want to be careful about that, a fever swamp of some of the worst things in us.
What do you think about this theory? I've seen it in myself. Of course, I've seen it in others, that it's just easy to call out injustice online. It doesn't cost you anything. We're recording this on the anniversary of the death of Martin Luther King Jr. His fighting racial injustice cost something dearly. It required great sacrifice, but now it's so easy just to pop off a tweet or leave a comment on Facebook or something, and you feel like you've done something significant.
Yeah, right. And that's why the test of this is always a test of love. And I don't mean that sentimentally. To love is to will the good of the other. Am I saying something which I truly believe is willing the good of the other? It's going to accomplish something good. It's trying to move someone into a better space. Do I really believe that's really my motivation as I do it? I would suggest probably 9,000 times out of 9,001, that's not the motivation. Rather, it's to be aggressive, is to vent my spleen, is to express my dislike, or increasingly to virtue signal. Like, hey, everyone, look at me, look how sensitive I am, look how open to justice I am. Well, I mean, la-di-da, who cares? If all you're doing is virtue signaling, that's actually undermining your moral integrity. If you're critiquing another out of love, that has an entirely different texture. And one thing for sure, if we applied that rule, we do a lot less of it, right? If you really apply the test of love, you would probably very rarely engage in this kind of speech.
Earlier, you mentioned the name of René Girard, and you said when this whole incident went down, your mind immediately went to Girard and his famous theory of scapegoating. Tell us who Girard is, and then a little bit about this theory.
Yeah, great, call him Franco-American sociologist, philosopher, born in France, but did a lot of his work in this country. Ended up at Stanford University. He died there just a few years ago. But Girard is most famous for this theory of the scapegoating mechanism, which in a nutshell is when these tensions arise in human communities, as they always do, by a basic instinct, it's largely a mechanism, mostly unconscious, we start casting about for a scapegoat, for somebody to blame. Now, is it rational? No, that's the whole point in some ways. It's an irrational instinct. We find someone or some group, usually who are a little bit different or odd or something, and we'll say they're responsible. That's why we're fighting. Those people have caused the trouble. And then it's a sort of addictive move. When someone starts scapegoating and we hear about it, we want in on that. Let me join this group. That group quickly becomes a mob, right? That's deeply irrational, that's very volatile and very violent. And it's got a purpose, though. Its purpose is to find and identify and then cast out, even to the point of killing, in extreme cases, the scapegoat. And what happens is, in this dysfunctional way, we think, order now will be restored to the community because we've come together and we've dealt with this, issue. As everyone and his brother who comments on Girard points out, Hitler is a prime example of this, right? That what he did in the Germany of the 30s is a perfect example of the Girardian dynamic of blame the Jews for our economic troubles, our political troubles, our military troubles, etc. They're the reason why. Let's blame them, cast them out, destroy them, and we'll build up the good society. But this can be seen all over the place, Now, here's what struck me. Girard was deeply influenced by the Bible. He got a lot of this theory from literary sources like Dostoevsky, Shakespeare, many others. But his main inspiration, it's fair to say, is the Bible. Because the Bible, he felt, both understood, unmasked the problem, and it showed the way out. It showed the solution. Now, read Girard for all the details on that. Or if you want, look at the story of the woman caught in adultery in the 8th chapter of John. It is a perfect exemplification of what Girard saw as both the problem and the solution. So I'll leave that there. But see, he was struck by the fact that one of the principal names of the devil is the Satan, right? Hosatanas in Greek, which has got its roots in Hebrew. The Satan means literally the accuser. That's why it can have the overtone in the Old Testament of the prosecuting attorney, right? So don't think right away of the horned figure with the tail and everything. Think of a prosecuting attorney, someone that blames, that accuses, right? Well, this comes up then into the New Testament very clearly. Think of in the book of Revelation when the accuser of our brothers has been cast out, who night and day accuse them before God. He's talking about the Satanas, right? The Satan. At the heart of the Girardian intuition is that we perform the satanic move all the time. A lot of our communities in their dysfunction are predicated upon the satanic instinct, accuse, blame. And the internet and the comm boxes has become, I think, sadly, such a breeding ground for just this kind of satanic move. And that's what came to my mind as I read these comments about this kid. Like, wow, has the satanic element been unleashed here in such an obvious way? That's why I say, if you're looking for the influence of the devil, don't look right away for all the special effects from William Friedkin. Don't look for the special effects from the movies. And I mean, those things can be real too. But look to internet comp boxes, and you'll find plenty of examples of the satanic, the accuser of our brothers. What this is building up is a very false and ersatz sense of community, very dangerous. And see, Brandon, the church stands athwart this. The church's job in a way, our job in the world is to expose the satanic, to undermine it, and to propose the alternative, what Jesus called the kingdom of God, right? That's a community predicated not on scapegoating, but rather on love, on becoming vulnerable for the sake of the other, on forgiveness, on nonviolence. See how all that is meant to reverse the momentum of the satanic. So that's why, I mean, where's the church when it comes to the internet, which is a major part of our civilization now? What's the church's role to overcome some of these really demonic tendencies?
You mentioned John chapter 8, which, as you say, is perhaps the best exemplification of this scapegoating mechanism. You have all the religious leaders lined up around this poor woman, demanding that she be stoned and killed immediately. Then Jesus comes up and forgives her and tells her to sin no more. You say, though, that it not only exemplifies the scapegoating mechanism in action, it also shows the way forward, how to solve this problem. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, think of as they come to Jesus, right? And why do they come to him? Because one of the instincts here is that the sacred justifies the scapegoating mechanism. That because it seems to restore order to the community, it seems to be sanctioned by the religious authorities. Now, read Girard for the details on how in many, many religious and philosophical traditions that's true, that God or the gods sanction scapegoating violence. So they come to Jesus, this great religious figure, and say, well, Moses told us to stone such women. What do you say? They're looking for the sanction. What does he do? He bends down and simply writes on the ground. It's very important now that he doesn't cooperate with the scapegoating mob. See, the scapegoating mob builds up like a storm cloud. Jesus does not contribute to it, but undermines it through a sort of non-cooperation. Now, think you're king if you want, at Gandhi and company. That non-cooperation with evil is a key thing. See, don't add to it. Don't increase the intensity of the storm, but rather refuse to cooperate. Now, we all have this experience. If you're in a little conversation circle and people are gossiping, they're scapegoating about somebody. See, we like that. We by a weird instinct in our sinful souls, we like that. Try it sometime when you come into a group like that and you reverse the momentum. You start saying nice things about the person being scapegoated. How popular will you be? Right? Not very. So Jesus, first of all, interrupts, but then the beautiful commentary from the church fathers, what's he writing? The only time, by the way, he's ever described as writing anything in the Gospels. What's he writing? And we don't know from John, but the speculation from people like Augustine is he's writing the sins of those who are holding the stones in their hands. In other words, interrupt the scapegoating momentum and then reverse it by inviting people to do a little bit of self-examination. But then the final move is not becoming relativistic about sin or denying sin, but Jesus offers forgiveness rather than condemnation. So neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. So the divine forgiveness is finally what corrects. So the momentum is stopped, first of all, but then it's corrected by the divine forgiveness, which ideally creates a new type of community. See? What if we had a community based not on scapegoating, victimization, but precisely on forgiveness? Here's something I got from one of the Girard commentators. I've never forgotten this. He said, in some ways, all of Girard is summed up by this. Whatever the problem is that we're facing, it's our problem. Now, see, it's very deceptively simple then, because the scapegoating mechanism is, oh, no, we got a problem. Oh, yeah, it's you. You're behind it. You've caused it. Let's get rid of you. Say, come on, everybody. Let's get rid of him. Rather than, okay, this is our problem. Now, that's not to say, we're all equally to blame and all that silliness, but it's to say we all have a stake in finding the solution to this problem. And so it's precisely by the forgiveness offered by the community that we will solve the problem together. I would urge people, this is on the micro level, the macro level, is keep that little phrase in your mind. This is our problem. So let's say the kid with the Indian elder and the people all around and shouting, and okay, whatever's happening there, and I still don't know exactly what was happening, whatever it was, this is a problem that we all got to solve together. We all got to solve this together. And the path is therefore one of forgiveness and compassion and nonviolence, right? Man, the internet world, compassion, forgiveness, nonviolence, does that leap to mind? So that's what strikes me about a lot of this stuff, is how literally satanic it is. I don't make that melodramatic, my statement. I mean that in a very literal way. It's based on the accuser, on accusation.
A few weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal did this big piece on you. It was an op-ed profile of you and your ministry, and they designated you the Bishop of Social Media.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you kind of find that title a little bit strange, but suppose just hypothetically, these 50,000 people that commented negatively, scapegoating this young man on social media were sitting in the pews in front of you, and you were their bishop, you were their pastor. Yeah. What pastoral advice would you give them?
Yeah, okay, I'll claim the title for a second. I think it is a kind of a dumb title, but I'll claim it for a second. I'm Bishop of Social Media, and I've got a spiritual responsibility to speak as a father to the social media world. I would say, if you are commenting in a way that is not motivated by love, keep your mouth shut. Use the test of love. Don't sentimentalize that. It means, am I willing the good of the other? Just ask. In fact, here's what I recommend to anyone, and we all use the internet. Put up on your screen, I got a screen right in front of me here. Put up on your screen, willing the good of the other. Put it on the screen. Put it on the screen. Use old tech, a piece of paper. Willing the good of the other. So that every time you are commenting on something or someone, you're reacting, am I willing the good of the other? Or am I engaging in some kind of virtue signaling, spleen venting, or scapegoating? If that's the case, shut up. Keep your mouth shut. Don't talk. Don't comment. If you can withstand the test of love, yeah, I'm doing this because I really want what's best. Off you go. Comment all you want, So that'd be my recommendation as Bishop of Social Media. Put that on or how about on the other side of the screen? Put down, this is our problem. Simple. This is our problem.
Well, that means it's time for a question from one of our listeners. And today we have a question from Will in Pittsburgh. He's asking about what will happen to our memories when we go to heaven. So here's Will's question.
Hi, Bishop Barron. My name is Will, and I'm from Pittsburgh, PA. Are memories something that we could take with us to heaven? Consider Isaiah chapter 65, verse 17. Would people with memory-related problems regain their lost memories in heaven? It seems to me as though memories play such an integral part of our personal identities. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. What's the text, Brandon, that Isaiah 65 again? What is it?
Yeah, let me read it here. It says, Isaiah 65:17, "See, I am creating new heavens and a new earth. The former things shall not be remembered nor come to mind."
Yeah, okay, because I don't think that has much to do with this. The question he's raising is a cool one, interesting one. About I think that means that God's about doing something new, and we're moving beyond the old form. And there's a new world coming. But the memory question is a very interesting one because I think that's right. It is very much tied to our personal identity. If you took away my memories, I mean, who am I? My sense of identity is largely predicated upon memory. Those who experience memory loss in this life, will they recover their memories? I would say yes. I would say yes, that in the new heavens and new earth, when God has reconstituted us at a higher pitch, I put it that way. He's not abandoned what's come before, but taking the whole of me and of you and now reconstituting us, taking it up to a higher level, what Paul calls a spiritual body. He's trying to gesture toward that. I like John Polkinghorne, the Anglican physicist and theologian, who talks about that God's preservation of the form, meaning the great pattern that makes us up, but then on the basis of that pattern, constituting us at a higher pitch. The way a computer might remember the form of something or the intelligible pattern and then be able to reproduce it. Now, again, it's a metaphor, because what God remembers is the whole of me, the whole of you, all that makes us up. Even though in this dimensional system, you might say someone with Alzheimer's or dementia issues might have lost touch. But see, God hasn't. God hasn't lost touch of anything. And so God can reconstitute us at this higher level. So there I'd say, yeah, I think our memories are certainly preserved. Our self is preserved. Our souls are preserved. But mind you, united with their bodies. I mean, so Christians don't hold to a Platonic view of like our souls escape from the body. No, God remembers and reconstitutes the whole of us, body, soul, memory, imagination, the physical. I was like my friend Matthew Levering, who reflected a lot about these things, the last things, He said, in heaven, we'll know the essence of God. That's so that there's a very Thomistic, intellectual understanding of heaven. But he also said, but you know what? We're going to see something too. And I've always liked that. I think that's right. The instinct is right, that our bodies are involved. Our eyes are involved. Now, these grow up, my poor eyes, God help them, they're falling apart. I hope they're reconstituted at a much higher level. I won't need these, I hope, But we'll see something. As well as knowing the essence of God, we're going to see something beautiful. Yeah, that's right, I think. But I think memories, yeah, they're preserved in God and then reconstituted.
Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Word on Fire show. Listen, something really exciting coming down the pipeline next week. It's our first ever Word on Fire Institute online summit. This is like attending the best Catholic conference you could possibly think of. We have 12 amazing experts presenting all on the topic of evangelizing the unaffiliated. So you can sign up for that free by going to wordonfireshow.com/summit. Again, wordonfireshow.com/summit, and it all starts on February 19th. Thanks again for listening. See you next week on the Word on Fire show.
Hey everybody, it's Bishop Barron. I'm here in Rome, standing in front of one of my favorite churches, Santa Maria in Trastevere. I'm here for the Youth Synod, but I'm reaching out today, especially on this Giving Tuesday, to invite all of you to make a donation, if you could, to Word on Fire. Over the past years, we produced all kinds of materials, from the Catholicism series to the Pivotal Players series to the podcast to YouTube videos, all sorts of things. And as you know, this kind of work is expensive. It's important. I mean, I think it's the best way to reach out to so many of the unaffiliated, and I'm really dedicated to that. But this kind of work is it's expensive, and we've relied on you. The church over the past many years has been pretty preoccupied with other things, and they've not been able to support us. We're here because of you. So could I invite you, please, could I ask you to make a donation to Word on Fire? Because without your help, we can't continue with this ministry. And to be honest with you, I wish it weren't so expensive. I wish we could do this effortlessly, but we need you. So Your prayers keep us going. I mean, I know that. People tell me all the time they're praying for us, and we wouldn't be here without your prayers. I know that. But also, we wouldn't be able to do this work without your financial support. So could I ask you on this Giving Tuesday to make a donation to us and continue to pray for us? God bless you.